Recording in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. Hayden, today I'm excited for this episode. I'm pretty tired. So you're gonna hear I'm gonna try to fake it till I make it to get through this one. So if some of my got listeners, if some of my thoughts are a little slow in forming or don't make a whole lot of sense, just bear with me. I got a 2-year-old that's keeping me up at night. So excited to be here. I'm running on 3 cups of coffee and I don't feel like they've taken effect yet.
Hey, I appreciate your commitment to the show and your honesty. I think people genuinely care about our honest thoughts and what's going on, and it's cool every now and then to actually hear what's going on outside of all this business talk that we share on the show. So hopefully you can start getting some more adequate sleep here coming up this week, and hopefully Blake starts to feel better.
You know what I just thought of, Hayden? Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take us down like a little bit of a hole real quick because I think you've got a point that people appreciate the honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about, going after things and like chasing goals and stuff a lot, right? That's a theme.
Yeah.
And we touch on things that are going on in our lives, but we don't talk about them in depth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to give, first of all, you an opportunity to what I'd like to hear from you, Hayden, is like, what does your life entail right now? What types of things are going on in your life that you're doing and moving towards on top of just this podcast and what we're doing as a media company? Because I think it's we talked about this on Friday. The fact that we're, you know, like this is not to give us kudos. This is to inspire people, and we feel inspired by each other. It's like, hey, we've got a lot going on, but we're like constantly pushing towards being better. And I'd love to hear you just elaborate a little bit on like kind of maybe what you've got going on in your life that you manage on top of obviously doing the podcast, pushing out the content, like, and maybe you don't want to elaborate too much on it, but I wanted to give you the chance because then I'll jump into mine too.
For sure. I think before I dive into anything, it's more so, and I know you were teeing this up pretty well. This is more so just a framework or a blueprint, however you want to internalize what Cole and I are going to share here with our personal lives and such, but kind of gives you listeners, some type of hopefully inspiration to say, well, if Cole and Hayden are doing some of this stuff, why the hell can't I? And that's hopefully what we can kind of help inspire people to pick up and lead their own lives and do what they want to do. Which is super exciting. And I draw inspiration from other people on their podcast shows. It's like, dang, not only are they doing this, they're doing X, Y, and Z too. I mean, human beings are really complex and fascinating people. And the more that you can learn from others, I think that just makes you a better, well rounded human being. So, anyhow, with that, like you said, Cole, definitely a lot going on outside of just unscripted exchanges. Super fortunate for the opportunity for us to continue to grow this media company. I mean, we're only about a year and a half in, heck, not even that, and we've seen tremendous growth. We've got a lot of exciting opportunities coming up, but outside of this venture, I've got some other things that I'm looking to start up, and some have already kind of been in the works. And I know this is still more so business oriented, but then I'll dive outside of that. So not only do we have, again, unscripted exchanges going, but I'm looking to immerse myself a little bit more in a fitness and health and wellness lifestyle type of company. I've set up a digital media page. Trying to get that going a little bit more full steam here in 2023. Baby steps, as I like to say, as well as maybe some additional efforts when it comes to real estate as well. So not only do I have this going on, which is super exciting, but kind of have those side ventures or hustles picking up some steam. And not to mention my day-to-day job, which you're well aware of, and I know you've got your day-to-day job. So that's kind of everything that's going on at a high level business-wise. But outside of that, I've got some goals or aspirations to one, just take care of those around me, build relationships. Um, I've had someone enter my life that is really important to me. So, kind of spending a lot of time making sure that I am growing that relationship in a meaningful way. I don't want to dive into any more at this point in time, but that definitely is something that I'm really making a main priority. And I know you've heard me share those thoughts on the show as well as offline. Like, you have to make the main priority, and that is definitely my main priority, or at least one of the top three. And then just some of the other things that I'm driving towards or hungry for, and that's just some other personal accolades around fitness goals. So I'm gonna be training for another marathon or half marathon here later this summer, and then maybe step my game up into yeah, something maybe longer than a full marathon by the end of the year. So that's going on. A whole bunch of house projects. I mean, the list could go on and on. And again, I'm not here to just brag because I don't operate that way. It's just more so, hey, if you use your time efficiently and wisely, like, there's a lot that you can pack into your life, and make sure that you are carving out the time to do what you want to do, because it does fill your coffee cup at the end of the day. Or if you don't drink coffee, whatever the heck you prefer to drink, whatever that
Fills your green
analogy
tea
needs to
cup.
be. Yeah, exactly. So, go after all of your dreams. I mean, we preach this almost every episode, and some of our digital assets too. Like, there's no reason why you would want to just go through life just coasting. I mean, life is way too short. And you never know when it's going to be your last day. So I like to just try to soak up as much as I can and do as much as I can. Now, there's definitely an art to that, but it's really cool when you can actually build a meaningful life and build around people that mean a lot to you and help others grow too. So, kind of at a high level, a lot of things going on, and it's just cool to continue to plant some seeds and continue to water them and watch them grow.
Dude, this is why you need me, because you're such a you play it so cool. That's why you need a hype man, man. Because I don't want to gas you up too much, get your head too big. But I'm gonna just highlight a couple things you said there that I heard, that I think is super important for our listeners. A lot of the times, I feel like we get into we get so focused on a topic, or trying to engage and share something meaningful, primarily around business or maybe fitness and a healthy lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to remind our listeners, and that's why I brought this up, is that we're not just talking the talk, but like this isn't all we do. And the thing is like this is one avenue of something that Hayden and I have gone after. And it's not to say, "Woo, look at us," give us a round of applause. It's to say, "Hey, to listeners and viewers, like, you guys can chase your dreams too. You can make the world what you want to make it."
Mm-hmm.
What I heard from you, Hayden, and I'm getting my caffeine high, and I don't even have caffeine right now because I just love this message. You know, if I were to put it into like a list of what you've got going on, what I would say is, okay, Hayden's extremely important, extremely focused on his physical fitness. That means he's got a regiment he's following every single day. He's training for a marathon. He's trying to treat his body and optimize his health. Okay, that's one thing that he's focusing on. Hayden's got a full-time job. He does very well out. He's got a very big commitment to that. A lot of his time during the week, primarily, is spent on that. During the normal business hours, is spent doing a full-time job. Oh, by the way, I've also got to balance, dreams I've got for real estate, things I've got for the podcast. I've got new relationships in my life. How am I balancing those? And before I kind of dive into what I've got going on, I want to highlight this, Hayden. Is like what that tells to me is that it inspires me, and it should inspire our listeners to be like, hey, you know, make the best use of your time, and like, don't be afraid to chase after things and like set goals and have visions. And like, there's so much more you can do than sometimes you tell yourself.
Mm.
And it's about a mindset. And so the reason I wanted to paint that picture, and I wanted you to go through this, and I'm gonna do the same thing, is that I feel like a lot of the time we sell ourselves short on what we're capable of, because we say, "Oh, there's not enough time in a day," or I don't have the energy for that. And it's like, yeah, sometimes that's true. Like we all have down days. But don't be afraid to go out and like chase after things and like move in there, and people that are moving get rewarded. And I think that's just it just paints such a cool picture of kind of what you've got going on. And I think it gives our listeners a better idea of like, hey, we're not just talking about it, like we're doing it. And we're not always perfect. I can say like it's the first thing I'll say is, looking at my life, Hayden, if I'm, throw the question back to me, is it's a challenge. Like doing this podcast, making the effort, doing trying to post on the media platforms, trying to grow this. Like some people, it might look easy, but it's not. And it's okay that it's not easy. We've got, as most of our listeners know, I've got two beautiful daughters that I'm trying to raise to be great, unbelievable little kids and grow into beautiful young women. I've got an amazing wife who I have to make a top priority in my life, whether it's doing things around the house, whether it's giving her the attention she needs. I've got we do. Just speaking of my daughters, my daughter's a horse person, right? I've talked about this a lot. So it's managing that, right? Going out to the stable almost every single day, taking her out there, leaving my phone behind. I've got a full time job too, right? Working that full time job, trying to maintain my physical health because if I don't, it's just going to affect the rest of my life. For me, my number one vision of why I try to stay in physical, it's not just because of how I look. I want to look good, but it's like, hey, if I can be better physically, I can be better mentally, and I can live longer for my daughters and my wife and my friends. So like, there's a lot going on in our lives, and it's really what I want to call out is just like for you listeners that are looking at what you've got going on, maybe you can push yourself to do more. Maybe you can prioritize better and like, use your time wisely and maybe draw some inspiration out of like Hayden and I saying like we're booked to the max, but we're still coming at it with full head of steam. Like that's to me, that's exciting. And I think that's something our listeners should hear.
Amen to all that. I mean, I think it's a muscle that always needs to be worked upon, and it's evaluating what are my top priorities. The way that I think about things is I have three priorities in my life. The first one is myself and my health, because if I'm not taking care of that, I can't take care of anything else, which would lead
Mm-hmm.
into my personal relationships with my loved ones, whether those are family members, romantic relationships, etc. And then three, kind of just any business ventures or just my professional career. Like, again, I will harp on this till the day I die, and I'm always fine tuning it myself. If you are not taking care of your health, both physically, mentally, spiritually, you're going to deplete yourself sooner or later. It will catch up to you. And if you want to bring your best self to the table, whether that's the dinner table around your family or a business table, I'm talking all
Specifically to the dinner
aspects here,
table.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I slid that one in there. You have to be very diligent about your health. And if that starts to go, everything else is going to crumble as well. And we see it time and time again. And I'm not out here saying that I'm perfect, but I like to think I'm in a relatively good place, and I've been in a relatively good place for a very long time, but there was a long period of time that I wasn't. And it takes, those tough times to get you to see a different perspective and figure out, what, this isn't right for me. I need to figure out how to go to where I want to be. I know that I can be that person, but I have to be willing to carve out time. I have to be intentional. And it all starts with your health, both mentally and physically. Once you can train this up here, everything else will start to follow suit. Now, the timing on that's up to each personal person and their journey and how much they're actually allocating time and energy towards. But I am so passionate about that. You have people that are burning both ends of the candle. They're spending time around people they shouldn't be spending time around. They're watching bullshit content online, whether it's Netflix crap that doesn't really fulfill them, but they're just coasting through. Like, the way that I think about it is I have an opportunity every single day to live my life to its fullest potential. And for me, I'm going to put in as much healthy time and energy in activities that are going to help me grow and not coast. Like every day is a opportunity. Again, I keep throwing out that word opportunity to get better. And I truly mean that. I am not going to coast by any longer. And there was plenty of times throughout my life where I was coasting, or you'll hear people say living for the weekends. Like, why the fuck wouldn't you live Monday through Friday as well? Like, that is a huge, percentage of your life. So every single day, I am trying to refine my skills, both professionally from a business standpoint and then personally. And again, we don't need to repeat all the intricacies to that, but you have to be living every day intentionally if you truly want to develop and become the best version of yourself. And that's going to mean something completely different to you, Cole, versus me and anyone else out there listening. But the main points that we're trying to drive home here today is the fact that you need to take accountability in your life and understand that you can set the bar high or you can set the bar low. It's up to you. You have the free will or the choice to basically figure out what kind of life you want. And I'm always looking to refine that and make it better over time. So enough of my high horse on that. I think it's nice every now and then to kind of share our perspectives, but I don't want to be coming off as virtue signaling or bragging, which again
Dude,
we've
who gives a
highlighted plenty
shit?
of
We're not
times.
bragging.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
not. No, dude, it's not virtue signaling to share good vibes and good thoughts. No, we're not. I'm gonna call you out on that because we're not virtue signaling. This was not a virtue signaling. This was a hey, let's share some stuff and let's share our personal lives. Like, and I mean, the last thing I'll add, we can dive into some. I know we had some good topics, and I threw a curveball at you today, but I'll just use a quick example. I quit drinking over a year ago.
Mm.
It has dramatically changed my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my daughters, my relationship with God, my physical health. And that was just one decision I made. I didn't make, and the funniest thing that people always say, people always want a story why you did it. I give you a million different reasons. I always want a story. Oh, you didn't quit that. Why? Whatever. I quit it because it was the right thing to do for me.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is I didn't do it for anybody else. Like you mentioned, hey, do what's right for you physically, mentally, spiritually, and the rest will follow. If I would have just been quitting drinking because it was what my wife wanted me to do, it wouldn't have lasted. I'd have gone 30 days, 20 days. It wouldn't have lasted because if I would have quit drinking because I thought I should do it for my daughters. I love my daughters to death. They are everything to me. That would not have been enough.
Mm.
I don't care. You've got to you got to believe it. It's the best thing for you. And that's when you can really start making a change. And when I quit drinking, I said it's because I want to be a better version of myself and I want to be a better parent. I want to feel better and I don't want to have these negative thoughts, this anxiety, the stuff that wasn't going on with me. And so when I did that, that was strong enough to carry on. And I'll tell you, the last year has been the best year financially, the best year spiritually, the best year as a father, and the best year as a husband that I've ever had. Now, the one thing it has changed is it's made me like I have a little bit clearer mind on what my priorities are. And I'm not saying, again, call it virtuous. I'm not saying everybody needs to quit drinking. What I'm saying is find that thing that you need to change in your life, maybe, and that'll help. And like don't be afraid to take chances. So again, I just want to add that because it's been a huge impact on me. And anybody out there that's like thinking about not drinking or quitting drinking, feel free to reach out, tag Hayden or I, and like we'll be happy to share our experiences around it and how we did it. Hayden's going on like I think 7 or 8 years sober. That's awesome. There's a community out there that you don't have to drink to have fun. And I'm not saying drinking is a bad thing. It's been a big factor in my life. So I'm just going to call it out.
Yeah, I mean, finding that catalyst for change, to your point, whatever that is to each person, go on that journey and you can make some real positive impacts in your own life and probably impacts around those that are close in your camp or your corner. So a lot of
I just
good
realized I need to have this mic hanging down like I'm like a UFC guy. You know what I'm talking about? When they had it?
Yeah.
Hello there.
Hell yeah.
I get it suspended from the ceiling. I'm holding it like I'm like I'm like announcing a ring in a boxing match.
I like the
Hello
mic.
there,
I
people,
like the
ladies and
mic
gentlemen.
though. It's definitely better than previous times when you've been remote. You're stepping your game up. We're always stepping our game up, as we like to say. There's one or two little things we always tweak every episode if you're someone that pays close attention to stuff like that, and that's just how we operate. We're always trying to figure out the best ways to optimize and get better. Anyhow, I think this next topic here, which we can probably just stick to this for the remainder of today's conversation, which I'm glad you kind of took us down that route the first half, and it kind of is just a perfect segue into this topic of managing yourself and managing your expectations. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a million different ways that we could take this. I know that you and I primarily talk about business related stuff on this show, and we will continue to primarily talk about that. But we will also dive into aspects of our personal lives and just other things that we think will be beneficial to not only you and I, but other listeners and such. But managing yourself is an extremely important thing to recognize. You want to make sure that you're self aware of all of the good in your life. Take a moment to be grateful. Think of, three things every morning or evening, or both in the evening and in the morning, to reinforce, hey, this is what I'm thankful for. But then also take time to strive for more. There's nothing wrong with wanting more, but also being grateful and recognizing, some of the positives are good in your life. But on top of that, you need to understand what your personal needs or expectations are, because if you don't, you'll end up finding yourself on a journey or a path sooner or later where you're like, how the hell did I get here? And that comes with maturity and failing along the way. I think what you and I were highlighting there, and I know we didn't go into a whole bunch of detail, but if you look back, Cole, on your life, you're like, you know what? I started to observe this pattern of behaviors, and I, for whatever reason, decided that I didn't like, this person. I did not like this version of Cole anymore. So, you know what? I'm going to course correct and end up trying these other things. And one of those examples, which we have a shared story here, is giving up on alcohol. Like, doing that just opens up the door for so many different opportunities. And again, that's where I'm highlighting. You want to understand how to manage who you want to be, where you are today, and making sure that not only what you say, or let's say what you write down, actually match the actions that you're putting forth into the world. You want to be very intentional with your time, and that will pay dividends in the business world as well. What do you want to do when it comes to putting food on the table? A lot of times it's more important to be working with people that you enjoy being around versus how much money you make. Not to say that making a lot of money isn't good. I like making a lot of money too, but you want to make
Right,
sure
right.
that you have a healthy relationship with those that you either, let's say, have report to you, or who you might report up to. Relationships are huge. We talk about that a lot too on the episode or the podcast here, and we've been diving a little bit deeper into it today on today's episode. But you want to make sure that you are managing not only maybe other people's perceptions of you, but you want to manage your own expectations of who you want to be and where you want to go, and that's going to make you a better person, both personally and professionally. So I want to maybe get your thoughts on what you think when it comes to managing either just your expectations for yourself, or the relationship that you have with you, because that's the relationship that you'll have from the beginning of your time to the end of your time, and you want to make sure that you're continuing to nurture that relationship accordingly.
Well, that's a tough one, because there's so many different. I could go on and on and on down so many different routes. But I think for me, kind of what sticks out, at least from a personal experience and person in my own life, is, when you're managing your expectations and managing your own life, like, you've got to be honest, like
Mm,
honesty. I think that's the number one and most important thing. And I'll go back to when I quit drinking. Like, I'm gonna use that as an example. Like, I think that's the biggest change I've ever made in my life. There's a lot of other things I've done that have been changes. But like, some people might say, well, when you had your first, your daughter at 19, I didn't have that. I didn't think like, oh, this is an option. So that wasn't like to me, because people would probably jump to that, like, hey, wasn't that a big major decision you made? I guess it was. But when I found out my wife now was pregnant when I was super young, I'm still young, but when I was younger, I didn't like it didn't process in my mind that I need to make a decision whether or not I'm going to be a good father.
Hmm.
Right? I didn't run in my mind like should I or should I not be there. So like that wasn't like I didn't have to really manage that. I just kind of was like I have to do it,
It
not an
came
option.
subconsciously.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't use that, right? What I would use to say like when I decided to quit drinking and I think the reason I'm using that is the honesty part of it. Meaning that I had to just be honest with myself that I didn't like this is a truth moment for me on the podcast. I liked a lot of things about myself. I didn't like that about me. I didn't like who I was. Uh not as a whole, but I didn't like how it made me feel. I did not um enjoy the fights and arguments it caused in my life. I didn't enjoy the way I would have a few beers and my priorities would shift instead of going and hanging out with my wife or doing homework with my daughter. Maybe I'd sit back and just drink a few more beers and watch TV. I didn't like those things, and I had to be honest with myself. And I've probably never told anybody this because I just I'd be honest. I've used the oh, well, I just wanted to try the 30 days, and that was part of it and feel better. But if I'm really honest, it was because I didn't like who I was
Hmm.
at that time as a whole. I didn't like I thought I could be better, I could feel better, and I had to be honest. And the tough part, I think about managing expectations and managing your own life,
Hmm.
and growing is that honesty part. Because before you can actually manage priorities, manage expectations, you have to be honest with yourself. Like if you're let's use priorities as an example, Hayden. You sit there and you look at your let's say your top three priorities in your life. And like you're like, okay, one, two, three, four, five. Okay. I can't manage five. I've got five, but I can only really manage three high priorities.
Hmm.
And you've got to be really brutally honest with yourself about what is actually the most important, not what your friends are telling you is most important, not what your coworkers are telling you is most important, not what entrepreneur.com is telling you is most important. Yeah, be the most successful entrepreneur. Not that stuff, because that can skew your thought. You have to dig deep inside yourself and say, hey, what is most important for me? And what is going to impact my life the most, and then you gotta manage off of that. And I think for all of us, like that's a struggle I have constantly. I mean, I'm not by any means perfect with it. I'm getting better and better every day. But I think when you start to do that, you have the honesty part, which is being honest with like, hey, where do I want to go? How do I want to prioritize? What do I want to go after? Honest, honest, honest. Like have that. Don't just sit down for 5 minutes. Like you gotta think about it, right? If you need to take a couple weeks, a few weeks, sit down, think about it, write some stuff down, come back to it later, scribble it out, write some more, right? And you don't have to actually write, type in your phone, whatever. If you dig deep and look at that stuff, the next thing is like sticking to it, and that's what causes a lot of like tension in your life too. You got to be okay with tension,
Hmm.
because the moment you start really trying to focus on how do I manage what's important in my life, then you're going to see things. We talked about this on Friday. You're going to see things, your bubble, you're going to see things start to like fade away,
Yep.
and it's going to start being really stressful because you're going to start thinking, well, I really don't want that to go away, right? Or oh man, like I see the relationship with this friend or that goal fading, and you got to go back to your like priorities. You got to go back to, okay, what have I deemed when I dug down in, does that fit? And it's you got to be able to let go, and that creates a lot of tension, and it's not easy. And I think those two things to me are probably the two most important things when you're looking at managing your life, is being honest and being okay with that kind of tension, uncomfortable, letting things go mentality. Because once you start to do that, things are going to have to be let go. Like you can't control and hold on to everything. Um, and I think I've seen that happen a lot. For me, I would just use the example like I remember telling Amanda when I quit drinking, I was like, dude, I have so many emotions that I didn't know I needed to deal with.
Mm.
Right? I'm just using, but like once I made that decision and started prioritizing, I'm like, man, like I don't have I don't have an outlet now. Like, okay, I got to go work out, but I'm like, holy smokes, like I'm stressed out. I'm starting to be stressed out more because I'm trying to deal with things and acknowledge things that I had put behind the curtain for so long.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially to our younger listeners out there, like, your siblings, my siblings, like my brothers-in-law, my younger people in our lives, and maybe even older, but you know, when you start getting to that phase of life and you start trying to manage your life and get where you want to go, like you gotta just it's gonna suck for a little bit, man. It's gonna be tough. You're gonna deal with things you haven't dealt with before. And that's when you need to have the right people in your life that you can call and be like, hey, having a rough day. Hey, I feel like I feel like I'm just being pulled in 15 different directions. I need some help. Um, and I think that's another key ingredient is having the right people in your life to help get you where you want to go, right? Whether it's just a sounding board or something like that.
Yeah, spot on with all that. And I think it's human nature for us to be somewhat resistant to change, or as you were describing, having a whole bunch of feelings where they might not be the ideal feelings that you want to have in your life. But that is, in my mind, completely natural and normal. And you have to be willing, to your point, either share what's going on with your loved ones or people in your camp, as I like to say a lot. But again, recognizing that you're going to have some of those less than ideal emotions, thoughts, whatever it might be. And the way that I kind of simplify this is self doubt will always be around. It will always fucking be around. That's just how humans are wired. It's just some people are better at managing that self doubt than others. Or you could even throw in anxiety, stress, pressure as different words to help resonate and make this point more clear to anyone listening. But what I've started to wrestle with and get better at over the past 24-ish months, and I would say it's even been longer than that, but I've really started to turn the corner, and I think you've helped with this, Cole. So kudos to you, man. Is your
I'll take it.
yeah your action must outpace or squash your doubt. Going back to us calling out all of the things that we've got going in our lives, these priorities, you could always question, well, is this the right thing to do? And that's a healthy conversation to have in your mind. And then, if necessary, having with, your wife or whomever it might be. But you need to recognize that, hey, I'm going to continue down this path by taking these actions, and these actions are going to end up being beneficial or fruitful to me. Like, fuck the doubt. The doubt is always going to be there. Like, I could say, you know what? I don't want to do this podcast today, or I don't think our podcast is growing at the rate that it should. We're not very good podcasters. And you know what? Fuck those thoughts. Like, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to put our best foot forward and do what we can do to grow the show, and we will grow the show. We're always going to have, some aspect of self-doubt, but you have to push through that. Or another aspect to that would be, you know what, I don't want to run 10 miles today, or I don't want to work out, whatever it might be to you. But again, pick up those weights, tie up those shoes, start moving. You have to let that action squash whatever the hell's going on in your mind. And sometimes your mind will tell you things that don't actually make sense or are true, but you have the free will or the choice to kind of manage that voice in your head. And sometimes the voice in your head thinks what it's doing is there to help protect you, but it's really doing the complete opposite, and it's counterintuitive.
Well, and I think we got to cut that part, by the way. I like that. Lace up the weights, lace up your shoes. I mean, we need to put that on a t-shirt. Seriously. I'm not joking.
Hey,
Just make
Jimmy,
we got this on
we
we got
still
this
got
on
Jimmy
podcast
Roman
form.
back here at the studio. That's Jimmy's job. He's the
That's a
intern.
sick line. I really like that. Got me hyped up to jump out the window, go run a marathon. I think what I think, and what maybe to put a bow on it, Hayden. It's this like we've said this so many times, and we've talked about this. I've talked about this with like so many people. Typically, if you know something's good for you, but like your mind, like you can know something's good, it's gonna pay off. It's good for you. a lot of the times your brain will say, well, I don't need to do it today.
Mm.
Or like, I'm not in the mood, or I'm too tired. Like the things that are like the best for you, for some reason, our brains are hardwired to try to shove those out first. I don't understand that, right? Meaning like you get up in the morning, and you start getting through the day and you need to exercise. You know you need that workout.
Yeah.
But you get through the rest of the workday, right? And you're like, I just man, I'm not in the mood. I don't want to work out. I'm tired. Right. And it's just like working that exercise was the best thing you could do for yourself that day.
Mm-hmm.
But yet it's the one thing that you're trying to get out of.
Yep.
And so like I have to remind myself, especially when I'm like in those, like, I don't want to do this. It's like, but it's like, it's good for me.
Yep.
And this sometimes there's times everybody's like, oh, Cole's a talker, man. He loves to talk. I think podcast is great for him, right? People say, I don't always want to get on here and rip. I don't. Like, there's days where I'm like, but you know what? Like, after I get out of here, I'm like, my brain's going. Like, I'm gonna get out of here, and I feel like I've just did like 3 5-hour energies. I'm hyped up, and that got my brain moving, and it got me to express myself. So I just think, not everything. I'm gonna give it a caveat. Not everything in our lives that our brain's telling us not to do should we just do anyways, right? If your brain's telling you not to do cocaine, like, probably don't do the cocaine, like, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
He went straight to hardcore drugs.
I'm just saying, right? Like, your brain's saying, I'm not saying like, oh, but it'll be good for you. Like, let's be very clear here. But what I'm saying is, if you've gone through that, like, hey, what do I need in my life? Where do I want to go? I prioritized. Like, remember that, right? Maybe take a picture of it and put it on your background on your phone, right? Like, like, hey, here's my start off with that, or maybe like having a little alarm set, like, hey, don't be a little bitch, like, get what you need to get done. Like, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of the times I've struggled with that, and I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like, shove those thoughts down, or like feel them, get in them, feel, and then just go do it anyways.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in. I wouldn't necessarily say suppress those thoughts, because those thoughts will still continue to eat away then at you, or come back quote unquote stronger. Again, I'm learning a lot of psychology stuff, things related to that. Not trying to get too nerdy. As you said, deal with them or observe them. They're just thoughts. You have every right to have whatever emotions that you have, but recognizing that you are greater than those emotions or those thoughts, and they're temporary. Again, no matter how bad they are or how good they are. And that's where I try to keep pretty even keeled as much as I can. Not to say that there's going to be times where I do have some down days or some up days and such, but the more that you can recognize how your brain works and how you can choose certain tactics to help keep you in that, level playing field, which we've highlighted things like eating healthy, working out. Like, those are things that are going to help move the needle, most likely in a positive way. So it's extremely important to call out. As we've been talking here for the last half of the episode, you really need to understand, how do you want to manage your life or your expectations for yourself? And it's completely fine to be wrestling with, the tough questions, tough problems, etc., but learn that is part of your journey, and you'll get better, and you'll be better for it. Don't alienate it. Don't, as Cole and I probably would say in the past, turn to alcohol to say, alcohol will fix it. Because you know what? It's not going to fucking fix the problem. I've never heard anyone. I've never heard anyone in my life say, you know what, alcohol fixed the problem. And if they do say that, they're absolutely lying to you, or they just don't really understand like what the hell they're even talking about. And sure, maybe it fixes the quote unquote problem, or it reduces the stress temporarily, but then the moment you wake up the next day, you feel 10 times worse. So it doesn't actually fix the root cause. It's just putting a Band-Aid on a never-ending wound. So you got to address those things in your life and really hit home on the root causes and managing kind of what your expectations are and who you want to be.
Hoorah! Hoorah!
Hoo! Hoo! All right, Cole.
Love it.
I think we wrap things up here, because I'm about to run through a wall with our conversation, and I'm about to run as well.
Dude, go get it, baby.
Folks, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. We do appreciate y'all. We are continuing to put our best foot forward, the best content, the best guest, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you all.
Let me say one more thing. For our listeners listening to us, if you have some topics you'd like us to dive into, please reach out. I mean, we'd be more than happy to touch on some stuff that you'd like to hear, some ideas that you want us to kind of get into that you think would be beneficial. So we've been getting a lot of good feedback. Just I wanted to end with that. Anybody that's got something they want us to react to shed some light on, you want to be on the show, reach out and we'll get you on.
Amen. Thanks all.
See you guys.